Winter always came quietly to our town, as if it didn't want to disturb anyone. Snow fell without sound, covering streets, rooftops, and thoughts alike. Everything slowed down in winter. People walked more carefully, spoke more softly, and felt more deeply. At least that's how it felt to me. I was 18, standing on the thin line between who I had been and who I was about to become, and that winter changed everything. I remember the cold first, not the sharp, painful kind, but the gentle cold that sneaks into your coat and settles against your skin, reminding you that you are alive. That morning, the sky was pale gray, heavy with snow that threatened to fall at any moment. I pulled my scarf tighter around my neck and stepped outside, my boots crunching against the frozen ground. Our town was small, one main street, a school, a cafe that smelled like burnt coffee and sugar, and a park that looked magical in winter. I had lived there my entire life, and sometimes it felt like the town knew all my secrets before I did. I was on my way to school, hands buried deep in my pockets, mind somewhere far away. Graduation was only a few months away, and everyone kept asking the same questions. What will you do next? Where will you go? Who will you become? I didn't have answers. I only had a quiet fear of the future and a heart that felt too big for my chest. That was the day I saw him again. I say again because I had known him before. Not really known, but recognized. We had grown up in the same town, walked the same halls at school, lived parallel lives that never truly touched. His name was Ethan. He was 18 too, tall, with dark hair that always looked slightly messy, as if the wind followed him everywhere. He wasn't loud or dramatic, but there was something about him that made people look twice. I noticed him standing near the school gates, snow collecting on his jacket, hands bare despite the cold. He was staring at the ground, lost in thought, just like me. For a moment, I considered walking past him as I always had, but something, maybe winter courage, maybe fate, made me slow down. When he looked up, our eyes met. There are moments in life that feel small when they happen, but grow larger every time you remember them. That was one of those moments. His eyes were a deep brown, warm, almost comforting, like they held a fire inside that winter couldn't touch. He looked surprised, then smiled. Not a big smile, just a quiet one, like he was unsure whether he was allowed to. "Hey," he said. "Hey," I replied, my voice softer than I intended. We stood there awkwardly, snowflakes drifting between us, neither of us quite sure what to say next. I could hear my heart beating, loud and impatient. "You're freezing," I said finally, nodding toward his bare hands. He glanced down, then shrugged. "I guess I forgot my gloves." Without thinking, I pulled one of mine off and held it out to him. "Take one." He hesitated. "Won't your hand get cold?" I smiled. "I'll survive." He laughed quietly, a sound that felt like it belonged in winter. "Thanks." When our fingers brushed for just a second, I felt it, a spark. Not the dramatic kind you see in movies, but something real and sudden, like warmth spreading through my chest. I told myself I was imagining it. We walked into the school together, side by side, close enough that our shoulders almost touched. We didn't talk much, but the silence wasn't uncomfortable. It felt easy. That day passed strangely. Classes blurred together, teachers' voices faded into background noise, and my thoughts kept returning to Ethan. Every time I saw him in the hallway, my heart reacted before my mind could stop it. He smiled at me once, just briefly, and I spent the rest of the day replaying it in my head. After school, snow had finally started falling properly, thick, soft flakes that turned the world into something quieter, kinder. I was walking home when I heard footsteps behind me. "Hey," Ethan's voice called out. I turned around, surprised. "Oh, hi. Do you mind if I walk with you?" he asked, gesturing toward the snowy street. "My house is this way too." "Sure," I said, trying not to sound too eager. We walked slowly, our breath visible in the cold air. Snow gathered in his hair, and I wondered briefly what it would feel like to brush it away. The thought startled me.
"So," he said, shoving his hands into his pockets, "you excited about graduating?" I laughed softly. Excited isn't the word I'd use. Terrified, maybe. He nodded. "Yeah, same." There was comfort in that, knowing I wasn't alone in my uncertainty. We talked about small things at first. Teachers we disliked, classes we couldn't wait to leave behind, memories from childhood. Somewhere between those simple words, something deeper began to grow. When we reached my street, I felt a strange disappointment settle in my chest. "This is me," I said. "Right," he replied, slowing to a stop. He hesitated, then smiled. "I'm glad we talked today." "Me too." There was a pause, one of those moments where something could happen, but doesn't. Not yet. "See you tomorrow?" he asked. I nodded. "Yeah, see you." That night, I lay in bed listening to the wind outside my window, watching snow fall under the streetlight. My phone buzzed, and my heart jumped when I saw his name. Ethan. "Hey, I hope this isn't weird, but I found your number in the class group chat." Me. "It's not weird." Ethan. "Good. I just wanted to say, today was nice." I smiled into the darkness. Me. "Yeah, it really was." From that night on, winter felt different. We started talking every day. Messages late into the night, quiet conversations at school, shared glances that meant more than words. I learned things about him slowly, that he loved old music, that he hated the cold but pretended not to, that he wanted to leave town someday but was afraid of what leaving might cost him. And he learned about me, my dreams, my fears, the way I overthought everything, the way winter made me feel both lonely and alive. One evening, we met at the park. Snow covered the benches and trees, turning everything white and silver. The air was so cold it burned my lungs, but I didn't care. We sat on a bench, sharing a scarf, our shoulders touching. I could feel the warmth of him beside me, real and steady. "Do you ever feel like this season changes who you are?" I asked quietly. He looked at me. "Yeah, like it strips everything down to what really matters." I nodded. "Exactly." He hesitated, then reached for my hand. This time there was no glove between us. His fingers were warm despite the cold, and when he held my hand, the world seemed to soften. I didn't know then where this would lead. I didn't know how much love could hurt or heal or transform. All I knew was that winter had given me something unexpected, and I wasn't ready to let it go. Snow continued to fall around us, silent and endless, as if the world itself was holding its breath. And so was I.
Winter didn't loosen its grip on the town. If anything, it held on tighter, wrapping everything in ice and quiet. Days grew shorter, nights longer, and somewhere between those dark evenings and pale mornings, Ethan slowly became part of my life. Not loudly, not suddenly, but in a way that felt natural, like he had always been meant to be there. We started meeting almost every day. Sometimes it was just a short walk after school, our backpacks heavy on our shoulders, snow crunching beneath our feet. Other times it was hours spent in the cafe on Main Street, the windows fogged from the warmth inside, our coats thrown over the backs of chairs. We would sit across from each other, fingers wrapped around mugs of hot chocolate, talking about everything and nothing. I began to notice the smallest details about him. The way his eyes softened when he listened, the way he smiled before laughing, as if he tried to stop it but never could. The way he always waited for me to finish my thoughts, even when I struggled to find the right words. He made me feel seen, not in an overwhelming way, but gently, like someone turning toward you in a crowded room. One evening after the cafe closed, we walked outside together. Snow had started falling again, slow and steady. The streetlights turned each flake into something magical. "Do you ever wish time would slow down?" I asked, pulling my coat tighter around me. Ethan glanced at me. "Right now?" "Yeah, like this moment could just stay." He nodded after a second. "I think moments like this are why time feels so fast. You don't want them to end." His words stayed with me long after we said goodnight. At school, things felt different too. People noticed. Friends teased me about the way I smiled at my phone. Some asked questions I wasn't ready to answer. "Are you two together?" my best friend asked one day, raising an eyebrow. "I don't know," I said, honestly. And it was true. There was something between Ethan and me, something warm and real, but it didn't have a name yet. Maybe I was afraid to name it. Names made things fragile. One afternoon, snowstorms forced the school to close early. The sky was dark, heavy clouds pressing low. Ethan texted me almost immediately. "Do you want to come over? My parents are working late." I stared at my phone longer than necessary, my heart beating faster. Me. "Okay." His house was small and familiar, much like mine. We kicked off our boots in the hallway, laughter filling the quiet space as snow melted onto the floor. Inside, it was warm, and the windows rattled softly from the wind outside. We sat on the couch, a movie playing quietly in the background, neither of us paying attention. At first, there was space between us. Then, slowly, without a word, that space disappeared. Our shoulders touched, then our hands. I could feel the warmth of his arm through my sweater. My breath felt shallow, and I wondered if he could hear my heart. "Are you cold?" he asked softly. "A little," I admitted. He hesitated only for a moment before wrapping an arm around me. The gesture was careful, almost uncertain, as if he wanted to give me time to pull away. I didn't. I leaned into him, resting my head against his shoulder. The world seemed to fade, the movie, the storm, the future. There was only the steady rhythm of his breathing and the quiet comfort of being close. That was the first time I realized I was falling in love. Not dramatically, not all at once, but deeply. Later that night, as I walked home through the snow, my cheeks still warm, I replayed the moment again and again. His arm around me, the way it felt so right, so safe. But love, even when it's gentle, carries fear with it. I started noticing the way Ethan sometimes went quiet when the topic of the future came up, the way his smile faded when people talked about staying in town forever. One night, while we were walking through the park, I finally asked, "You want to leave after graduation, don't you?" He stopped walking. I turned to face him, my breath visible in the cold air. He looked conflicted, his eyes darker than usual. "I've always wanted to," he admitted. "There's a whole world out there. I don't want to spend my life wondering what could have been." My chest tightened. "And this town?" He hesitated. "It feels too small sometimes." I nodded, pretending his words hurt. I had dreamed of leaving too, but dreams feel different when love enters the picture. That night, I cried quietly in my room, the snow tapping against my window like a question I didn't know how to answer.
Days passed. We didn't stop seeing each other, but something had shifted. Not broken, just delicate, like ice that hadn't cracked yet, but could. One evening, Ethan showed up at my door unexpectedly. His hair was damp from the snow, cheeks flushed from the cold. "Can we talk?" he asked. I nodded, stepping aside to let him in. We sat on the edge of my bed, close but not touching. The silence felt heavy. "I don't want to lose you," he said finally, "but I don't want to lie to you either." I swallowed. "I know. I don't know what the future looks like," he continued, "but right now, you matter to me, a lot." I looked at him, really looked at him, the boy who had walked into my winter and changed it completely. "Then let's just be here, for now." Relief washed over his face. He reached for my hand, this time without hesitation, intertwining his fingers with mine. "Okay," he whispered. That night, as snow fell silently outside, he kissed me for the first time. It was gentle and unsure, lips brushing mine like a question rather than a statement. My heart raced, and when I kissed him, the world seemed to hold still. The kiss tasted like winter and warmth and something dangerously close to forever. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. "I've wanted to do that for a while," he admitted. "So have I whispered. Winter didn't feel cold anymore. But deep inside, I knew love doesn't stop time, and spring always comes, whether you're ready or not.
Winter reached its deepest point after that kiss. The days felt frozen in place, as if the world had decided not to move forward yet. Snowbanks lined the streets, taller than my knees, and the air carried that sharp stillness that only comes when everything is buried beneath ice. Ethan and I were officially together, though the word felt both comforting and terrifying. Saying he was my boyfriend made my heart flutter, but it also made everything feel more real. Real things could be lost. We spent more time at each other's houses now. We studied together, listened to music, lay on the floor staring at the ceiling while the wind howled outside. Sometimes we talked for hours. Other times we didn't need words at all. Being with him felt like warmth spreading slowly through frozen hands. But warmth, I learned, can melt things too. It started with small moments. He would grow quiet when his phone buzzed with messages from universities. I would look away when people talked about staying close to home after graduation. Neither of us wanted to be the first to say what we were both thinking. One night, we lay on his bed, tangled in blankets, the window beside us fogged from the cold outside and the heat inside. "What scares you the most?" I asked, tracing invisible patterns on his sleeve. He was silent for a long time. "Waking up one day and realizing I didn't choose my life," he finally said. I swallowed. "And what about us?" He turned to look at me. "Losing you scares me too." The honesty in his voice made my chest ache. Love wasn't supposed to feel like this, so full and so fragile at the same time. As winter dragged on, the town began preparing for the end of school. Posters appeared on walls, announcements echoed through hallways, reminding us that time was moving whether we liked it or not. One afternoon, I found Ethan sitting alone on the school steps, snow falling softly around him. "You okay?" I asked, sitting beside him. He handed me a letter without a word. An acceptance letter. A university far away. A place he had dreamed about since he was a kid. My fingers trembled as I read it. I looked up at him, forcing a smile. "That's amazing." "Is it?" he asked quietly. "Yes," I said, though my throat burned. "You worked so hard for this." "But it's far, really far." I nodded. "I know." The silence between us was heavy, pressing down like snow on weak branches. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at my ceiling, listening to the familiar sounds of my house, realizing how much I loved things I might soon lose. Not just Ethan, but this version of myself, the girl who believed winter could last forever. A few days later, we argued for the first time.
It wasn't loud or dramatic, it was worse, quiet and careful, like we were afraid of breaking something already cracked. "You don't talk about it," I said as we walked through the park, the snow beneath us turning gray from footsteps. "You act like it's not happening. I don't know what you want me to say. That I won't go? That wouldn't be fair. I'm not asking you to stay. I just want to know where I fit in your future." He stopped walking. "I don't have answers yet." "That's not an answer," I whispered. His jaw tightened. "I'm 18. I don't know what my life looks like in 5 years. Do you?" "No," I admitted, "but I know how I feel." "So do I. That's the problem." We stood there, snow falling around us, the world unbearably quiet. For the first time since winter began, I felt truly cold. After that, things changed. We still saw each other, but the ease was gone. Conversations felt careful, like we were stepping around invisible cracks. I started noticing the way he held back, the way his hugs lingered but felt hesitant, as if he was already learning how to let go. One evening, we went to a party, one of the last ones before graduation. Music filled the house, laughter echoing off the walls. Everyone seemed desperate to forget that endings were coming. Ethan stood beside me, his hand resting on my waist. He smiled, laughed, kissed my temple, but I felt like I was watching us from a distance. Later, I stepped outside for air. The cold hit my face, sharp and grounding. A moment later, Ethan followed. "You're quiet," he said. "So are you." He sighed. "I don't want to hurt you." "I know, but pretending nothing's wrong is hurting me too." He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw it in his eyes. Fear, love, guilt. "I love you," he said, suddenly. The words hit me like a wave. "I love you too," I whispered, tears threatening to fall. He pulled me into his arms, holding me tightly, as if he could keep me there forever. I pressed my face into his jacket, breathing him in, knowing this moment was already slipping into memory. Winter began to soften after that. The snow melted slowly, revealing patches of ground beneath. Days grew a little longer. The town felt restless, and so did we. Love had grown between us, real, deep, undeniable. But love alone couldn't stop time. Spring was coming, and with it, a choice neither of us knew how to make.
Spring didn't arrive all at once. It crept in slowly, like it was unsure whether it was welcome. Snow melted into thin streams along the sidewalks, and patches of grass appeared where white had ruled for months. The air still carried a chill, but it was different now, lighter, restless. So was I. Graduation loomed closer with every passing day. Teachers spoke about the next chapter with forced enthusiasm, as if saying it enough times would make the fear disappear. The town buzzed with plans, goodbyes, and expectations. Ethan and I existed in the middle of it all, holding on to each other while the ground beneath us shifted. We didn't talk about his departure date. We didn't talk about distance. Instead, we collected moments, as if storing them away might make them last longer. One afternoon, we skipped school and drove out of town, the road lined with bare trees just beginning to show hints of green. The radio played softly, a song neither of us commented on. "Do you think we'll remember this day in 10 years? I asked, staring out the window. He smiled sadly. "I think I'll remember everything about you." I looked at him, my heart aching. "That's not fair." "None of this is," he replied. We stopped near a frozen lake, the ice cracked and thin, reflecting the pale sky. We sat on the hood of the car, wrapped in jackets, close enough to share warmth. I wish things were simpler. I wish love was enough. His honesty hurt, but I needed it. As graduation approached, emotions ran high. My friends talked about summer plans, about staying or leaving, about new beginnings. I smiled, laughed, and pretended I wasn't breaking quietly inside.
One night, Ethan came over while my parents were out. We sat in my room, surrounded by memories, photos, old notebooks, pieces of a life that was about to change. "I leave in 3 weeks," he said finally. The words hung in the air. I nodded. "I know." "I don't want to pretend anymore," he continued. "We need to talk about what happens to us." My hands shook. "Say it." He took a deep breath. "Long distance, it scares me. I don't want to lose you slowly." Tears filled my eyes. "Neither do I. But holding on to something that might break us, that scares me too," he said. Silence stretched between us. My heart felt like it was splitting open. "So what are you saying?" I whispered. He reached for my hands, squeezing them gently. "I don't know how to say goodbye, but I think loving you means not making promises I can't keep." I cried then, not loudly, but fully. He held me as if it were the last time, and maybe it was. Graduation day came wrapped in sunlight and forced smiles, caps and gowns, applause, photos that would later feel unreal. When they called my name, I walked across the stage, feeling like I was leaving something behind with every step. Ethan found me afterward, pulling me away from the crowd. "You were amazing," he said, kissing my forehead. "So were you." We stood there, 2 18-year-olds pretending we weren't about to break each other's hearts. Our last night together came quietly. We walked through the park where we had first talked about winter and change. The trees were blooming now, petals scattered across the ground. "Do you remember what you said here?" he asked. "That winter changes who you are," I replied. He nodded. "You changed me." I reached up, touching his face, memorizing it. "You changed me too." When he kissed me, it wasn't gentle this time. It was desperate and full, like we were trying to pour all our love into one moment. When we pulled apart, I rested my forehead against his. "Promise me something. Anything. Promise you'll live the life you want, even if I'm not in it." His eyes shone. "I promise." The next morning, I didn't go to the station. I knew I couldn't. Instead, I stood by my window watching the world wake up. Winter was gone, and love, real love, had taught me that sometimes letting go is the bravest thing you can do. But as the sun rose, warming the town we had grown up in, I realized something else too. Love doesn't end when people part. It stays in the quiet moments, in the seasons that follow, in the person you become because of it. And somewhere out there, I knew Ethan was walking into his future. So was I. Years later, winter found me again. Not the same winter, not the one that wrapped everything in first love and fear, but a quieter one, older and softer around the edges. I was 24 now, standing on a platform in a city much larger than the town I grew up in, snow drifting lazily through the air like it had nowhere else to be. I had learned that snow follows you, no matter where you go. Life had moved forward the way it always does, unevenly, unexpectedly. I left home a year after graduation. I studied, worked, failed at things I thought I would be good at, succeeded at things I never planned. I loved again, but never the same way. First love leaves a shape in you, and everything else learns to exist around it. I hadn't seen Ethan since the morning he left, not in person. We exchanged messages for a while, short ones at first, then longer, then less frequent. Birthdays, holidays. Eventually, silence. Not angry silence, just life filling the space between words. And yet, he never really disappeared. He was there in winter mornings when the cold felt familiar, in cafes with fogged-up windows, in songs that sounded like endings and beginnings at the same time. I told myself that was normal, that love like that doesn't vanish, it settles. I was back in my hometown for the holidays when I heard his name again. "Did you hear Ethan's back?" someone said casually at the grocery store. "Just for a few weeks, I think." The words hit me harder than I expected. That night, snow fell the way it used to, quiet, steady, patient. I walked through streets that hadn't changed much, my breath fogging the air, memories layered over reality like double exposure. I didn't know why I went to the park, but my feet did. The bench was still there, older now, the trees bare, reaching into the sky like questions. I sat down, pulling my coat closer, smiling at how predictable my heart still was. I thought I might find you here. I turned. Ethan stood a few steps away, hands in his pockets, snow catching in his hair just like it used to. For a moment, neither of us spoke. He looked different, older, sharper around the edges, but his eyes were the same, warm, careful, familiar. "Hi," I said. "Hi," he replied, smiling in that quiet way that once meant everything. We sat together, space between us, snow filling the silence. "I almost didn't come back," he admitted, "but winter does that to me, makes me think." "Me too," I said. We talked about life, about where we'd been, about who we'd become. He told me about the city, the degree, the job that didn't quite feel right yet. I told him about mine. Not once did we talk about what we were. Some things don't need names anymore. As the cold deepened, he looked at me. "I loved you," he said softly. "I don't think I ever stopped." My chest tightened, but there was no panic this time, only truth. "I loved you too, in the way that matters." He nodded. "I think that love did exactly what it was supposed to do." I smiled through the ache. It made us. We stood to leave, walking back toward the lights of the town. At the corner where our paths separated, we stopped. "No promises," he said gently. "No regrets," I replied. He hugged me, not desperately, not like before, but fully, warm, complete. As I walked away, snow falling around me, I realized something I wish my 18-year-old self had known. Love doesn't always stay in your life, but it always stays with you. Winter passed, spring came again, and somewhere inside me a season ended, not with loss, but with gratitude, because some loves are not meant to last forever. They are meant to last enough.